Hello, hello. 1 2 3 1 2 3. So this is so you're on mute. You're muted.
I am not anymore, right? You can hear me?
There you go. Yeah, there you are.
Finally.
Hey, there we go.
Oh god. I feel like every time I do a Zoom interview, a different thing goes wrong.
Yeah, I know. Just you got to account for them. It's gonna happen.
My toes.
Yeah.
Anyway, it looks like we have a couple of our participants. I will admit them.
Excellent.
And let me just in the chat, I'm just gonna drop the link to buy the book in the store.
Amazing.
Thanks for rolling with the schedule change.
Oh no problem. I noticed that we were maybe saying PST in the chat, but the link had ES. So yeah, just one of those things. Happy to. Yeah, I was getting my car worked on today, and I noticed that. I'm like, oh man, am I supposed to be at this thing right now?
How's the car? Is it better?
Car's great. Just a standard 85,000 mile tune up.
Gotcha. All right, so everyone, I am dropping the link to our online store so you can buy Bubble a copy if you don't have your very own. And we do ship in case any of you are across the country or wherever. So you can also order it over the phone, or we have lots of copies in the physical store. So why don't we get started? Jordan, thank you so much for letting me randomly DM you to ask if you would do an author event with us.
Love it. That's the best possible DM you can get.
Yay! And I don't know if you can see bubbles still in our window, but
yeah, I can. No, that was awesome. Yeah, I definitely saw. I saw that that the shop had it in the display. It's very flattering. It's always very exciting to see it in a real live bookstore. A friend sent me a photo of it in a library the other day. That was a real thrill. So yeah.
I realized that my video was on, so I'm like pointing behind me and you can't even see it.
Nice.
God, this will be quite the recording. Okay, well, I'm gonna try not to fangirl here, but so is this the first, I know you have a lot of other podcasts, but was Bubble the first audio drama you've written? I know you've written for lots of other shows, but.
Yeah, no, Bubble is the first audio drama that I did. And yeah, there was a little bit of a learning curve for sure. I had a lot of great help, not just on the graphic novel, but on the podcast from Sarah Morgan. She is my co-writer on the graphic novel, and she had a lot of great input for the podcast. And she, she lives in the UK. She's a comedy writer in the UK. So like, a big part of her, income is writing, audio dramas and audio sitcoms for the BBC, which is something, that they do a lot of out there that we do not do a lot of here in the States. So yeah, she was just a great resource and, did a lot of great hand holding and tip giving. And also we had some great editors too, who had worked on stuff like this in the past. And our director, Eric Martin, directs a lot of, of these types of things. So he was a great resource. So there were definitely things that I, didn't know going into the podcast making, but there was a good team. So we had a good team and a lot of good brains on this thing.
So what kind of inspired you, if you've never written an audio drama before, how did you get the idea?
Yeah, so Bubble started out as a TV pilot. So I wrote it, I had been working in like late night TV for years and years and years. And the show I was writing on was like kind of coming to an end. And, when
Was that at midnight or was that a
it
different
was
one?
at midnight. Yeah, at midnight on over there on Comedy Central. And so I had that job for a long time and it was kind of wrapping up. And then I just needed a writing sample, just if you want to get another job, you need a writing sample. So I was thinking a lot about like, oh, what would I like to write next? And what I like to do that I haven't done yet. And so, yeah, I had just a vague idea that I wanted to write like a funny genre thing. Something that was maybe a little Marvel, a little Buffy, a little, just something that kind of mashed together all the stuff that I liked. And yeah, that's kind of the very, very vague idea that I started with. And then and then the kind of the rest of Bubble filled in. I kind of, liked thinking about how the little hell we all go through to live in cool cities, with high rents and bad housing and stuff like that. So yeah, I was kind of like thinking about that as a general kind of comedy idea, and then the idea to make it kind of a sci-fi thing where to live in your hipster shire paradise, you had to kill monsters and fight aliens and destroy robots, and so that kind of filled itself in. And yeah, and then the kind of the pilot happened, and just to you know uh, people in show business get a lot of scripts. They don't read all the scripts, but they sure get them. And I thought it would be fun to just kind of like set mine apart from, the other piles and piles of scripts that get emailed around every day. I would do a little staged reading of it. So I did a staged reading and made an audio recording, just because I've been podcasting for a long time. And so I have access to people who own microphones and some funny people who have cool voices and are funny actors. So yeah, I just kind of I saw that I had a little advantage in that area, and I made a little like audio recording of our staged reading, and yeah, and I put that up online just as kind of a, hey, here's what I'm working on type thing. And people really responded to it. People really liked it. They like automatically started asking, is there more? When are there more episodes coming? And I think around that time, Maximum Fun, the podcast the network where I do Jordan Jesse Go and that did the Bubble audio bits. I think they had wanted to try something scripted for a long time, and and I think they saw this and they were like, oh, here's something that's kind of like, already not whole baked, but at least partially baked. And, we could kind of do that in house. So they were nice enough to kind of like put up the money and resources to make those audio episodes. So yeah, Maximum Fun kind of saw it as a cool opportunity, and and it was a blast. I'm really, really happy with both how the podcast and the graphic novel turned out.
Yeah, I love all the Max Fun references in the graphic novel, the Thank God or whatever, it's Friday.
Yeah, so those are all Tony Cliff. Tony Cliff did the art and Natalie Reese did the colors, but Tony is like, he's in addition to being a brilliant artist and a wonderful guy, he's just a really sweet podcast fan. So he likes the Max Funiverse, and so those little references, the Thank God or whatever, it's Fridays, and the McElroys kind of having little cameos in there. The McElroys of the Adventure Zone and My Brother and Me. So all those were kind of Tony's call. He thought it would be a fun little homage to the network, and yeah, they're a blast, and I don't think they distract. I think we definitely didn't want this to seem like an inside joke, like something that you couldn't just pick up because you saw a cool display in a store. We wanted this to be something that like anybody can pick up. Like if you heard the podcast, we wanted it to be a fun supplement. If you hadn't heard it, we wanted it to be a complete story that didn't feel like you needed a bunch more information. So yeah, I think that the references are they're really cool. I think people had a lot of fun with them. But I don't think they're like necessary to enjoy the book. So
yeah, it's definitely more of an Easter egg than
right. Yeah.
you have to be familiar with all. It's not the Marvel Cinematic Universe. You don't have to have listened to every Max Fun podcast in order
right.
to.
Yeah.
So remind me, was this the first scripted podcast that Maximum Fun had done, or had they done like
I
the Magic Tavern at that point?
I think so. So Hello from the Magic Tavern is an Earwolf show, I believe, which I've been on a couple times. A really hilarious show kind of set in a D&D like fantasy world.
I get so confused because all the podcasters I like are on everyone else's show.
Yeah. It's hard to keep the network straight.
A ton. Paul F. Tompkins he is obviously the mayor of podcasting, and then
right.
I love all those voice cameos too. John Hodgman as standard guy.
Yeah, I know. It was so fun to like cast Bubble. It was, and everybody was really nice, and everybody who was in it, you mentioned John Hodgman, Paul F. Tompkins, the McElroys, Judy Greer, Helen Hong. All these great people worked for much, much less than they were worth. And they all did an awesome job. And then of course the main cast with, Keith Powell, Mike Mitchell, Eliza Skinner, Allison Becker. They all just like were such champs and came in and did it for a fraction of what they usually get paid for something like this. So I'm very, very grateful to everybody who put their hilarious voice in the thing.
How did you go about casting was it like you kind of were inspired by what came first, I guess, the cast or the character kind of? Did you know who you wanted to put in it already?
I think for the most part, we stuck to the people who were in the original staged reading. I think Keith Powell was not in the original staged reading, and Cristela Alonso was not in the original staged reading.
Cristela Alonso, she's Bonnie, right?
She's the Bonnie. She's the kind of evil Bezos CEO. I shouldn't say evil. Maybe that's a little bit of a spoiler, but
see a corporation in a sci-fi context, that they're not.
You kind of know it's coming. It's coming. Yeah,
exactly.
Van,
right?
Sorry?
Keith Powell's Van.
And Keith Powell is Van, yeah. So they weren't in the original stage reading, but as far as everybody else goes, like, Allison Becker has been a friend for a long time. We did like UCB sketch comedy together, and I just like love her acting and her comedy chops, and always when I'm writing something, kind of just have her in mind because I think she's just such a funny actor. And Eliza, kind of same deal. We didn't do UCB together, but it's just like one of my favorite, most hilarious, funny people, and like such a good voice actor. She's mostly a stand-up and a writer, and doesn't do a ton of voice work from what I know, but is so funny every time she does. I just like wanted to like work with her in that capacity, and she's such a great improviser and just like casually tossed off 10 hilarious things that are in there. And Mike Mitchell is just one of my favorite people, and he, I definitely like wrote the character with him in mind. The guy's name is Mitch, so didn't even change it, didn't even bother to change it.
Why change it?
Yes. Am I a bad art friend? Who knows? No, I checked with Mitch and made sure it was okay. I used his name, and he was very nice about it. These are, for the most part, it was just kind of like people I had done comedy with and who I thought were funny and would do a good job. So.
And it seems like, I was reading the interviews in the back of the book, and it seems like casting ended up being super important with the graphic novel, because I know Tony said that he drew people the way they sounded.
Yeah.
So I totally see this. I was reading this and it's like, oh yeah, no, that's exactly, even though I know what Mike Mitchell looks like, and it's like, that's exactly what Mitch in the story would look like.
Yeah, they're not like, they're not one to one. I think with the exception of the McElroys who kind of come in later, no one is drawn to look like the actor. But yeah, I think Tony's thing was he took one little kind of physical thing from every actor and kind of started there with creating the characters. So yeah, he's a brilliant dude for sure, and just did a great job, I think, of capturing their like spirit, but not just drawing the person verbatim. So
yeah, and kind of what works for the situation.
yeah, for sure.
So how did you find him? Like, and you and Sarah Morgan, I guess. How did you decide to collaborate with him when it came to writing the graphic novel?
Sure. Yeah. So I was a fan of Tony. So Tony does a great all ages series called Delilah Dirk. It is this kind of swashbuckling adventure story, a little bit Indiana Jones, a little bit Cutthroat Island, which is a reference we all like. And yeah, I loved those books, and just through having read those books, I, kind of just became chatty Twitter friends with Tony. I live in LA and he lives in Vancouver. So, we weren't like hanging out IRL or anything, but we were just like chatty Twitter buds. And yeah, and I just like loved his style, and the publisher First Second. So they put out the first 3 Delilah Dirk books. So they, so they had worked with Tony, and then just like when the time came to like, we made the deal to make the book, and then obviously someone needs to draw it. It's a comic book. So I just said like, why don't we ask Tony Cliff? And then 2 days later, they said Tony Cliff will do it. So yeah, it was a real great, like, we never thought about anybody else. Like, it was not a draw off or a contest or anything. It was just like, he's one of my favorite artists, and, I kind of sort of know him. So it's an easy ask. And yeah, it really worked out great.
Yeah. When did you decide to turn it into a graphic novel?
Yeah, when they asked, basically. So First Second, this was kind of like their idea. There's a great editor over there named Callista Brill, who is just very sweet and brilliant, and yeah, was just such a great like advocate for this thing. Yeah, I think they had a lot of success, obviously, turning the Adventure Zone podcast. That's the McElroys role-playing D&D podcast. They had a lot of success turning those into graphic novels. So yeah, I think they, just were kind of early to the idea that like you can take these audio stories and, make them into comics, and, they're already a little bit geeky and a little bit, playful with genre, so it's a nice fit. Yeah, so I think they heard Bubble and just thought like this could be a good graphic novel. And yeah, I mean, I've been just a comics kid for basically my entire life, so I was just like so happy and excited to do it. And yeah, so this was definitely their idea, and I was so happy that they asked.
For anyone who would like to read The Adventure Zone or Delilah Dirk, we have both of those in store.
Yes. Yeah. Great. Yeah. Perfect for your holiday shopping. Yeah. And if you have any like kids or teens you want to buy comics for, the Delilah Dirk books are awesome. And I love the Adventure Zone books too. They're a little grown up. They're a little sweary. So definitely get those for any
thing about Bubble. It's not a graphic novel for kids necessarily.
No, not for kids. But there you go. Yeah, get them started with Delilah Dirk, and then you can work up to Bubble and the Adventure Zone.
I was reading it out on my porch, and I was just like cackling, laughing. And I live on like the second floor, so I'm sure no one could hear where the laughing was coming from. It was very atmospheric and spooky, probably. So, that's good. Thanks for enhancing my Halloween.
Good. Yes, happy to do it.
Yeah. So from what I understand, it's going to be a movie as well, right?
Yeah, I'm finished-ish writing the movie, and yeah, we've got a lot of great partners on that too. So that is with Sony Animation and 2 great production companies called Matt Tolmack Productions and Point Grey Productions, and they were like just fans of the podcast kind of around the same time that that for a second got in touch about the book. Matt Tolmack Productions got in touch about doing a movie, and yeah, and they've been so nice and awesome, and like love the source material. I know that like I had some other meetings with showbiz people about Bubble, showbiz proper, and all the people I met just kind of seemed to like it because it was a podcast. Like they didn't seem to care about the characters or the humor or anything like that. They're just like, this is a podcast. My kid told me about these, So, those didn't seem like great fits, but the folks at Matt Tolmack just liked the characters, and they liked the world, and they got the sense of humor, and they talked about it like it was any other, product. They talked about it like it was a TV show or a book, and so I'm like, oh, I like this. We're not like, they're not obsessed with the fact that it was a podcast. So yeah, they've just been like awesome to work with. Movies obviously take a long time, as do comic books. So yeah, we're plugging away at that, but it's been a really, really fun process.
Seems like this is like your third time writing this story then, if you had to like pare it down to make it into a graphic novel, and now I'm sure there must be changes you have to make it into a movie.
Yeah.
It sounds kind of exhausting.
Yeah, I mean, these things are all a lot of work, and I think they do take a lot of time. And that's something I've that's constantly a surprise to me, is like, oh, these things just take a while. There's a lot of cooks, and like they are all good cooks, but there's a lot of them. And yeah, so it's not like I like Bubble. I'm like happy to write Bubble stuff for as long as someone wants me to. Yeah, so it's fun. It's a pleasure. I would say that like, it's yeah, I think that like the time thing is the main, like if there's anything that could be considered an annoyance, and none of it is, like, I'm very lucky. I'm very, very lucky that I've gotten to do this. Like I'm in love with the book. I think it's awesome. And I think the movie's going to be great. And I love all this stuff, and I'm like very lucky to get to do it. But if anything, like, if I could say that there was like a downside or anything, it's just like, no, these things take a while, and you get excited about them, and you want to share them with everybody. And, it's just a while to do these things right. So, I'm happy to do it, but there's definitely this sense of like, I like this so much, I want people to see it now, so that part of it is a little tough to navigate. But other than that, it's just like, it's very fun, and I'm thrilled to get to do it. So
yeah. What was so when you had to kind of rework the podcast into the graphic novel format, and I know again from the interviews in the back, you had to kind of like scrap some things necessarily. What was the hardest thing to kind of leave in the podcast but not bring to the graphic novel?
So I think that like the cuts we made were all like, this is funny, but it doesn't have anything to do with like the larger story. Mm-hmm. So just kind of like funny little jaunts and asides and stuff like that. You mentioned John Hodgman's character. John Hodgman plays a character in the podcast who does not make it to the graphic novel, called Standard Guy. And he's just this guy who is like so boring, people don't remember his name. They just call him Standard Guy because that's the only way, the only thing they can remember. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we kind of tried. We tried to have like that character pop up or have like a different role, but yeah, it was just kind of a matter of space and time. So yeah, so hopefully Standard Guy will make it back into the Bubbleverse at some point. But so yeah, just kind of stuff like that was like fun and funny, but was like, it felt like it was a diversion from the story.
Mm-hmm. Who's been your favorite character to write?
Oh, I mean, they're all great. I really like them all. I mean, it's fun to spend time with them all, and like, and kind of like find everybody's little joke bucket. I mean, I think that like Annie kind of like grew on me the most. I think she like I think she maybe started out as a little bit of a, less three-dimensional character. She's, she's kind of just this like, she's like a drug dealer and she doesn't like to work hard and she likes food and booze and, working as little as possible. And I just kind of thought like, oh, this is a fun type of person that I know. But it was like, it was really fun to like, you know, just kind of get into her emotional life a little bit. And and like, and then to have like Eliza do the voice, and she brought so much life to it. And then like how Tony drew her, I thought was really fantastic. And like, just with little kind of looks and posture things, was able to like bring so much character to her. So yeah, I think her like becoming not just like a joke bucket, but like a real, more three-dimensional person was just really, really fun. And I think that happened for a lot of the characters. Van is kind of that way. He's kind of like, he was like a little bit of a, you kind of like didn't learn a lot about his inner life on the podcast, but we tried to give him a little story in this to where he can have some moments that aren't just like him being a dumb bro. So yeah, it's fun. It was fun to like, kind of figure out what their lives were beyond the jokes. So
I feel like anyone who has spent any time in California or just the West Coast in general knows a Van of some kind.
I mean, I think there's an East Coast version of Van, right? I mean, there's Vans everywhere. I mean, I think that like, maybe the like East Coast version of Van is more likely to like, do stand-up paddleboarding and go to a Fish concert or something like that. But I don't know. I think that guy is everywhere.
That is true. He's got different variations, but he reminded me a lot of so many guys that I went to college with. One never wore shoes. He just kind of walk around, no shoes.
That's it. Yep. There it is. That is that kind of guy for sure. I definitely went to college with a lot of no shoes guys.
I feel like the characters, despite it being such a strange situation, the characters are really relatable. So is there one that you kind of recognized yourself in more than the others?
Yeah, I think that like Morgan, the main character, I think that she has this streak where she like wants to do it herself. Like she kind of, she became really independent, I think we kind of learn how that happened in her backstory, but like, she's just kind of like, she's just comfortable being a lone wolf, and she's just comfortable kind of like, I've got this, like, it's hard to explain to others what I want, so I'm just going to do it myself. And I think I've got a little bit of that in me, and I think I'm, a little bit of a do-it-myselfer, and I think I, don't naturally like ask for help when I need it, or I don't, naturally like sometimes I don't always think to collaborate with someone on something. So I think that like, Morgan's story is about her stretching a little bit and like asking for help, like it's like, okay, I'm very competent, but I cannot do everything by myself. And I think I can kind of relate to that. I kind of like liked writing that part of the story, because I'm like, oh yeah, this is like, I have some of those tendencies for sure. So,
which is interesting because you do so much collaborative work. I mean, just even in, writing the graphic novel and all your podcasts and being a writer in general, I guess. But I very much saw myself in Mitch. I was just re-listening to the podcast, and there's a point at which he's helping them move, and he says he's just uncoordinated and not helpful. It's like, oh, yeah. So can we look forward to like the same or a lot of the same voice cast in the movie, or are you switching it up a little bit?
We have genuinely not talked about who will be in the movie.
Really?
We have absolutely not talked about it.
That's
Um,
amazing.
yeah, no, we haven't talked about it. So yeah, I think that's something for like the director, whoever that is, will have like a lot of input on who they want to work with, and I'm sure that like there's a lot of producers, and I'm sure they've worked with people they think would be good, and like yeah, I obviously would like love for the podcast cast to be like as involved as they want to be. But yeah, but that is genuinely not something we have ever talked about.
Well, I mean, the movie, from what I found, it was kind of only confirmed like last year, right? Or ish.
Yeah, I've been working on it for a long time, but yeah, I think that like it got announced in like the trades last year. So
How long before like the podcast actually coming out? Like how long from the genesis of Bubble to like the actual production of the podcast? Because it seems like from what we see as the audience, everything's happened like wicked fast, like from the podcast.
Yeah, the podcast came together pretty quickly. I think that
Yeah.
like I wrote it and did the staged reading pretty quickly, and like yeah, and I think Max Fun kind of made the decision pretty quickly, and we wrote it pretty quickly. So yeah, I mean that's like something that's so awesome about podcasting, and so such a cool like advantage of like telling a story like that is like yeah, like this other stuff that I'm talking about, like publishing and movies and TV, like it just takes a long time, and like obviously like there's a lot of pros to that. You can get something right, and like obviously I would not have wanted to rush Tony at all in drawing Bubble because he did such an amazing job. But yeah, podcasts are kind of great in that way, in that like obviously there's a lot of like labor and a lot of like talent that goes into them, but you can record something and edit it and put it up like compared to that other stuff so quick. So yeah, Bubble the podcast definitely was like quick. So
how do you decide when to, I mean, yeah, you've worked on TV, I'm sure this was easy, but how do you decide when to end an episode? Because I assume you had, it definitely seems like you had everything planned out in advance. So how did you decide when to break it up?
Oh, like how long they should be?
Yeah, and like what part of the story you're going to tell at once?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know if I have a great answer to that. I mean, the scripts for the podcast are just like, they're basically just TV scripts. They're basically just like half-hour sitcom scripts. Like if you took a class on how to write a half-hour sitcom, they would look a lot like Bubble scripts. So yeah, I mean, I think we like 3 acts, and at the end of the first act something goes wrong and builds in the second act, and the third one is the resolution and slightly shorter than the other two. So yeah, I think we just kind of followed those rules. And yeah, as far as like the bigger story, yeah, I don't know how we parsed that out. I mean, a lot of it happens in the back end of it, so like we didn't parse it out very evenly. But yeah, I think we just wanted to have some like fun adventures that kind of set the table, and then like move on to the like bigger, more serialized stuff.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite? Oh, this is where I should say, if anyone has any questions for Jordan, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Do you have a favorite kind of, I guess, scene or incident, episode, whatever, that happened in the graphic novel? Like,
yeah, so there's something so cool in the graphic novel that was all Tony, that was just a pure Tony decision that I think is so great. There is a scene where the Mitch character like takes too many drugs, and he has like a trip, and we're kind of put inside his head as he's tripping, and to properly read the caption, you have to physically turn the book around, and it's just great. No one told him to do that. It was just like his own thing. He's like, I want to try this. And yeah, it was awesome. I just love it. I just loved those little surprises. Like, can you believe what he did here? And like, obviously that's a big like form breaking, thing you don't see in comics a lot. But there's all sorts of little ones where just like, um the sound effects, the comic book sound effects, like there's this bit where a creature is flying away and the little sound effect coming off it is fucking flying away with the words fucking flying away. So yeah, there's just so many cool little touches like that weren't in our script that we gave him, that he just like pulled out because he's a genius.
So the ending of the graphic novel leaves possibilities open. Are you thinking about writing more, a sequel?
I would love to. I would totally love to. And I think that like the creative team, time permitting, would love to. So like, hopefully people like this one. Hopefully they go to your website or in your store and buy a copy and post about it on social media, give it as a gift, review it on review sites, and yeah, hopefully there's just like enough demand, because I would love to write more. I think the gang would like to make more, so yeah, would love to. So
so you have a couple other projects coming out, right? Is it another graphic novel or is it a podcast? I remember I saw it on your website.
So I'm doing another graphic novel with the gang at First Second. It is a YA horror comedy. I'm doing it with an awesome artist named Bowen McGurty. Bowen McGurty is pretty brilliant. She has a great series that just came out this year called Spectre Inspectors. It's kind of a like comedy about ghost hunters that is really, really cool. And yeah, so yeah, we've been working on that. Again, comics take a long time, so it'll be a hot second before you can get that in the store. But it's been really fun to work on. I definitely like love the people at First Second, and Bowen has been such a great partner in this. She's just she's just been fantastic, and is a really good writer herself too. So it's been like fun to kind of work with her. And our great editor, so it's the same editor as Bubble. So it's Callista Brill, but also our day-to-day person is Allison Wilgus, who has a great series, not a series. It is a one and done called, oh gosh, I'm messing up the name. It is about going to Mars. I am sorry to hold on. You know what? I'm gonna Google.
All right.
Okay, I'm Googling with one hand.
When your other graphic novel has a release date for everyone, we do pre-orders. So you will be in the store before it comes out.
I got it. The Mars Challenge by Allison Wilgus. It's great. It's kind of a like documentary comic about all the stuff that goes into going to Mars. It's really, really cool. And they're like a great writer themselves, and like just so nice to have aboard and to bounce stuff off of and stuff like that. So yeah, it's a great team. I'm just so happy to be doing comics. I love it a lot. And yeah, like you said, pre-orders. Boy, there's no pre-order for the new book yet. It's called Youth Group. But yeah, once it is, do it. And definitely if you want to support authors, like those pre-orders, they're a big deal. I didn't know that before starting working in publishing, but they're a big deal.
We can also do special orders if anyone wants to order the Mars Challenge.
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely. Mars Challenge is a great book. And again, like the Love Jerk, great for kids and teens.
And shop local, buy indie. And again, we do ship. So I see in the chat, Jenny with an exclamation point asked, graphic novels aside, what was your favorite book as a child?
Oh, favorite books. Oh, that are not graphic novels. Yeah, I loved the Narnia book. Sorry, go ahead.
I said, I would love to know what was your favorite graphic novel.
Oh, sure. I'll do both. Yeah, so as a kid, we loved the Narnia books. We definitely got a set a box set of all the Narnia books and read those together as a family. Excuse me. We did a lot of Dr. Seuss. I think when I got into like chapter books, I loved Kurt Vonnegut. And that was like an early, like, I'm reading a grown-up book feeling that was really good. And that those definitely have such a great little blend of like sci-fi and comedy to them. For sure. And the Hitchhiker's Guide, of course. The Hitchhiker's Guide was like a big one, of course. If I don't need to tell any nerd to check out the Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, but it was a big one. And yeah, as far as comics go, I mean, like my first comics were definitely just like superhero comics that my mom got me in a grocery store because it would shut me up. Like, so, like Spider-Man and X-Men, it was the 90s. So like, obviously those like, X-Men comics that kind of inspired the cartoon were a big deal. And yeah, and I still read those today. I still go to my local comic book store and pick up those floppy issues. Those have done such a great job of like, kind of staying with the audience and doing stuff for, fans my age and fans of, kids and teens and trying to bring everybody in. So yeah.
Yeah. All right. If anyone has any other questions, but Jordan, do you have anything you'd like to plug?
No, not. I mean, we talked about it. There's Bubble. You can get it. Again, if you'd like to see more volumes of the book, buy the book.
Please do.
And and I do a podcast called Jordan Jesse Go. It's just kind of an aimless chat show. So if you like a little aimless chatting, Jordan Jesse Go, you can get that and Bubble the podcast over at MaximumFun.org or wherever you get podcasts. But that's a place you can
also get. Is there Bubble merch on the site? I know there's a lot of Max Fun merch. I was just looking at the Judge John Hodgman stuff before I came into work. But maxfunstore.com. I don't know what Bubble stuff is still available, but there's definitely a lot of good Max Fun merch out there, and that helps podcasters too, definitely. So if you want to like support your favorite podcaster, buy a shirt. Yeah, and Max Fun is listener supported too, so that's very important.
Of course, yep.
And Jenny has another question. Love that. What is the most difficult thing about writing for a character of a different sex or gender?
Well, I mean, I guess I don't know that I have a, I can speak to my personal experience, but like, I think that I kind of thought about it when I was writing for someone who is not a straight white guy, just to like, they're all kind of inspired by people I know, like everybody's just kind of somebody I know from real life. I mean, in the case of Mitch, it's just his exact name. Obviously the Mitch character is definitely kind of like exaggerated in a lot of ways, but like, it's definitely kind of inspired by the real guy. So yeah, I guess I try not to think about it of like, what would a woman do here? Or what would a queer person do here? I just think of like, oh, the person's is based on what would they do and say, and I kind of try and write them and not like think too much about someone's pronouns or something like that, and I know that stuff is like important too, and I think there's a lot of good people who read not just my work, but all the work that kind of comes through. I'll talk specifically about the comic now. It's like they have a lot of people who read stuff and make sure that like, hey, we want this to be inclusive and we don't want this to offend anyone. And, so I think a lot of good people are kind of like looking out to make sure that all that stuff is as sensitive and inclusive as it can be. But as far as on my end, like, yeah, I kind of just try and I just kind of try and write about people I know and hope that comes off as authentic. So yeah.
Yeah. Thinking about it, I feel like of the main characters, there's no one who you couldn't like do a different gender and their character wouldn't work anymore. Like as far as characterization, I feel like they're all pretty neutral. No one seems to be particularly like, oh, well, Annie has to be a woman, but Annie's just a character of herself.
Yeah. Hopefully they don't, and I think sometimes that like, you can, when you're watching something or reading something, like, I know this like happened a lot with the entertainment that I grew up with. I know we're maybe like about the same age, but like the stuff that I grew up with, there's a lot of stuff where it was just like, we got to have a girl, throw in a girl, and so there's kind of a like, a half-baked female character who doesn't have a lot of characteristics. So yeah, I definitely don't want to do that with anyone of any identity, like, we gotta have this thing. So yeah, I guess I just try and like, use people I know as inspiration for like fun characters, and like, just make sure that I'm like thinking about what makes them tick and not just like, what their what their gender is or what their race is or something like that, but just like thinking about them as like people, so
to speak. Yeah, the only ones I can think of are, book club. We know that book club is going to be a group of wine moms.
Sure. Yeah. No. I mean, hey, I think there could be people of many genders in book club. But I think like with book club and with the trivia dudes, there's a group of kind of know-it-all kind of pop culture obsessives, and obviously there are people of all genders who act like that, but many of them are dudes.
Yes, I feel like that's another one that everyone knows those guys.
Yeah, sure.
The book club, oh my God, that was one of my favorite sound effects in it, when the book club's approaching and then it's just live, laugh, love is the sound effect.
Yeah, that's maybe the funniest thing in the book. That's all Tony.
I just finished rereading this yesterday. I think I'm going to have to read it again after I get out of work. It also took me like, for anyone who's like, I have so many books to read, it took me like 2 hours to read this. So
yeah, comics are quick. Comics are really quick.
Exactly. Oh, here's a great question from Pixel 3. How is the process of writing youth group been different than Bubble, along the lines of starting off writing a graphic novel versus turning a podcast into a graphic novel?
Yeah, so youth group is interesting because, there wasn't like source material. There's a little like proof of concept type thing that I turned into them, but like, the story could kind of just go anywhere. And there was a pitch too. Kind of part of the pitch is like, here's where the story will go, ABC. But we didn't really stick to the pitch. We just like kind of let it go its own direction. Yeah, so I worked with Ali Wilgus on this a lot, and Bowen came on later, but like, yeah, we just kind of worked together and like, bounced ideas, and it was a little more just like, it was a little more like sitting down to write. I was just like, let's see what they're going to do today, and it was a little more like seat of our pants. It was a little more like, having kind of a roadmap, but we take a lot of little detours that I think are fun. And I think some kind of surprising stuff got written because we didn't really have anything to stick to, or stuff we were trying to include. It was just like, yeah, this can be whatever it wants to be. And yeah, it's fun. They're both really fun ways to work. Like, I really liked the process of like adapting Bubble and picking and choosing and stuff like that. But this has also been like a blast, just to kind of like let something let something be what it's going to be in a little bit more of an organic way. So
aside from not including so many drugs and swears, is the process of writing YA much different for you than writing something more for adults?
Not a ton. It has not. I thought it would be a little bit weird, but it's not been weird. Yeah, I mean, again, just like, watching the swears, and yeah, but I guess I'm thinking a little bit like, what's something I would want to like, what's a value I would want to impart to a kid or a young person. I don't think youth group is preachy at all. I don't think it's going to be like, it's not like a polemic or anything like that. But I think I think we're trying to say like, here's some values, I guess. And it's been interesting. Hopefully, I think it is just going to be funny and fun to read. But like, I think there's a little bit of like, here's some stuff I learned. It's a lot about my childhood. It's a lot about like, it's set in the 90s. It's about a hip church group. I mean, there's like monsters and stuff in it, but like, so I think there's a little bit of like, here's kind of what I learned from having that experience growing up. So yeah, it's a little personal in that way. So
yeah. And I'm guessing you didn't live on a bubble in an alien planet, so that does sound like a different experience.
Sure. Yeah.
Some personal situations to draw from. Did you go in intending it to be YA, or did you kind of just realize that that's how it was coming out?
Yeah, so that was a conversation I had with Callista Brill, and I think I turned her in a very vague outline. I'm like, I think I would like to write this as a book if you guys want to do it. And I think she was like, I think this would be a good YA story, because I think the characters were a little younger, and yeah, I think there's some like trappings of YA in this. So yeah, I think she was smart to see that in it. Because I think it's working really well. So yeah, but I didn't come to the table with a age group I wanted to write it for, but I think like Callista, I think she saw the like YA potential in it, and yeah, I agree with her. I was like, I don't know, but I think when we started writing it, it was just like, oh yeah, this works. So
do you see yourself writing more graphic novels after youth group? Is this going to be something you continue to do?
Oh yeah, I would love to. I love this process. Comics people are so nice. Like it's just been a pleasure. It's been one of the great pleasures of my life to do this. So yeah, I really love it. And I hope to keep making comics for as long as people want to read them. Yeah, it's been a very wonderful experience.
I was hoping you would say that because I want to read more.
Oh, hey, thanks.
What are you reading lately? Anything you would recommend?
Oh yeah, I am. So I just finished the first two trades of Something is Killing the Children. This is the new hotness in graphic novels. Mm-hmm. It is by James Tynion IV. I am forgetting the artist name, but the art is very good in it. Yeah, it's a kind of a spooky Stephen King thing. With these kind of mysterious monsters who only prey on children. So it's a little grim, but it is very, very well written, very like darkly funny. And I am reading a great novel called This Is How You Lose the Time War. It is a great...
I think we might have that in the store, but I haven't read it. But
it's great. It is by two authors whose names I'm forgetting. So it's interesting in that it's a 2-author novel, but it's this kind of story about a future where there are two sides involved in a time war, and two agents on kind of other sides, opposing sides, are kind of like following each other through time, and it's turning out to be a little bit of a love story. So yeah, it's them kind of tracking each other throughout time, but also like falling in love. So it is really, really great. I'm loving it. It's very weird. It's very funny, and yeah, I recommend both of those things.
Yeah. So all of those, something you can buy from us. If we don't have it in stock, we can special order it. Just, I need to put in as many plugs as I possibly can.
You gotta plug. You must be plugging.
Exactly. We're an
Always plug.
indie bookstore. We gotta get that local support or community, whatever support.
Yeah.
But Jordan, well, I will let you go. This has been so fun.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for reaching out, and thank you for for supporting the book, for putting it up in the store, and for asking me to chat. This has been really nice.
Yes, and I'm not sure if whoever tagged you in the picture that they posted of Bubble in our window is on the call, but just if anyone can get it back to them, thank you, because you,
absolutely,
person made this happen. So
yeah, and it's always so nice to like see Bubble in a bookstore or at a library. So definitely love to see those little social media posts. Those are awesome.
Absolutely. All right. Well, this has been great. We would love to have you back when Youth Groups comes out.
Yeah, for sure.
A date for that, but I'll definitely be watching for it because I never read YA because, as I've said many times in here, I don't want to feel nostalgic for my teen years, but I will be reading that one. All right. So we will let you go. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks. This was a fun chat.
Yeah, thanks to everyone who tuned in as well. And remember, you can follow us on social media so you find out about all our author events. And if any of your friends weren't able to tune in, we will post this either on our social media or on our website, but everything's been recorded. So, all right. Well, have a good night. Jordan, for you, afternoon. Thanks. All right. Bye, everyone.